Over the course of their Witcher video game trilogy, CD Projekt Red has added a number of fantastic characters to the continent. Fan favorites like Vernon Roach, other Witchers like Letho of Gullet, and terrifying villains like Gaunter O'Dim. But if you ask me, their strongest original character is Philip Strenger, better known as the Bloody Baron. The central figure of Family Matters, The Witcher 3's award-winning walk-away questline, the Bloody Baron embodies so many of the qualities that make the Witcher universe stand out in the fantasy genre. Morally gray and full of contradictions, the story of the Bloody Baron forces the player to respond to questions that have no easy answers, all while providing Geralt with a clear foil in the game's narrative. But before I go on, if you are a Witcher fan, then please be sure to like, subscribe, and consider supporting me with a YouTube channel membership or over on Patreon. My dream is to make these videos full-time someday, and by doing any of those things, you'll be helping make that dream a reality. The Witcher 3 begins to tell us about the Bloody Baron the moment we arrive in Velen. Not directly, but through the environment. Conquered White Orchard was bleak enough, but Velen? This place is a dump. The armpit of the continent, a true post-war hellscape not unlike Westeros in A Feast for Crows. Immediately, it causes the player to think about the Lord running this mess of a province, and conclude that they must either be an awful person or an absolute mess themselves. The answer is both, but it'll be some time before they come to that disturbing realization. Even our introduction to his men serves to characterize the Bloody Baron well before we meet him. The outright banditry that they display at the inn at the crossroads, and the way they challenge Geralt makes it clear that whoever leads this crew is no true ruler, but a leader of a band of thugs who just happened to stumble his way into becoming a Nilfgaardian vassal. Emir soldiers are ruthless and cruel, but I'm struggling to think of a time when they were as stupid as the Baron's goons are here, and that speaks volumes about the man running the show over at the Crow's Perch. But that's not the only way the game indirectly characterizes the Bloody Baron. As you travel from town to town in Velen, you'll eventually find posters depicting two women, one young and one old, who are missing. They're both related to the Bloody Baron. They're his wife and daughter. As I discussed at length in my last video, Lilac and Gooseberries, the main quest the player likely just completed, establishes Geralt as a family man over and above everything else. Even though we've yet to meet the Baron, it's easy to feel bad for him based on this information alone. The game, to this point, has conditioned us to sympathize with family men, and these posters set up the Baron as a mirror image of Geralt, a man in search of his missing loved ones. Which is important, because as Geralt and the player are about to learn, not all supposed family men match up to the White Wolf's example. Geralt's first encounter with the Bloody Baron stems from his own familial mission, to find Ciri. Thanks to the information he learned from a Nilfgaardian spy who got murked by Eredin, he knows Ciri spent time at the Crow's Perch. So Geralt goes there to pick up on this promising lead. Initially, the Baron dances around the issue of Ciri, offering Geralt a drink and toasting to Temeria. He starts to talk about the region of Velen, how easy it is for someone to get lost in its swamps and bogs, and mentions that people are missing their wives and daughters. Even if the player has found the aforementioned posters, that information is lost on Geralt here, as he can take the Baron's words as a threat. Devoid of context, it's hard to blame him. These exact words, said differently, could certainly come off that way, like a taunt from a gangster. But the Baron is no Whoreson Jr., and the sad, pathetic way he says these lines makes it clear that he's not threatening Geralt at all. He's talking about himself. It's one of the many moments where the game's writing shines, as Geralt's lack of empathy, or perhaps just his desperation to find Ciri, causes him to miss emotional cues that are apparent to most players. He'll then tell the story of how he first crossed paths with the ashen-haired girl, how Ciri rescued Gretka from a werewolf and brought her to him. As important as this story is to Geralt and to his understanding of Ciri's journey, it doubles in continuing to characterize the Baron as a supposed family man. These aren't the people he's looking for, but still, he shows them incredible generosity, giving them a hot meal and a place to stay. It comes in stark contrast to the province he's in charge of, which is, as I mentioned earlier, far and away the most hostile region in the game. Honestly, he's probably the most welcoming character we meet in Velen. Well, except for Kira, but she's welcoming to Geralt for, far different reasons. All of this is so important because it continues to establish the Baron as a good, hospitable father, with motivations that are almost identical to Geralt's. What follows both challenges and reinforces that idea, depending on how you view it. After telling Geralt about his generous treatment of Ciri, the Baron cuts the story short, refusing to tell the White Wolf more until he locates his missing wife and daughter. Now, Geralt understands, just as we do, that the Baron's words at the beginning of this conversation were not a threat, but a reference to their shared circumstances. It's at this moment that the game creates a clear parallel between the Baron and Geralt, something that the posters have been gesturing towards since we first arrived in Velen. Just like Geralt, the Baron wants to reunite the members of his scattered family. Again, the game is setting us up to feel for the Baron, to empathize with him the same way we empathize with Geralt. But as I said earlier, the game still manages to challenge this idea at the same time, as it's very clear about the fact that even if the Baron has similarities to Geralt, he is not comparable to him. He's not Geralt's reflection, he's Geralt viewed through a funhouse mirror. Because while the Baron is trying a whole bunch of different things to find his family, Geralt is out doing everything he can to find Ciri. One man is playing Lord from his overgrown fort, giving out drunken orders to his goons to keep an eye out for his family, while the other is literally searching half the continent. While working on this video, I wondered to myself, if roles were reversed and Geralt needed the Baron to do something to find Ciri, would he do the same thing? Would he dangle information about the Baron's wife and daughter over his head? The answer is that he'd never be in that position in the first place. He'd be out looking for her instead. It's one of the many things that separates the two men, and from there, the game continues to toy with the idea of the Baron as Geralt's dark reflection. Geralt accepts the Baron's exchange, but I think it's noteworthy how readily he does it. He could threaten him. We've seen Geralt do that before, but that doesn't happen here. I think this speaks to the idea that the White Wolf wants to believe that the Lord of Crow's Perch is just like him, even if the game is setting up something different. It's only natural on Geralt's part. Just like any father, he wants to believe that the man who took care of his adopted daughter when she was hurt, and even took in the little girl she brought along with her, is a good person, a true family man, just like him. It creates a blind spot for Geralt, which is really the only way to explain how he approaches the investigation that follows. During the initial questioning about the disappearance of his wife and daughter, there are cracks in the Baron's story. If he was a true family man, he wouldn't describe their behavior in the days prior the way he does here. Geralt's no wordsmith, but he would never be as vague as to say that Ciri was, quote, preoccupied with her things. The same is true of his comments about the treatment they received at the castle, about how he'd order crookback burgers for dinner every night if that's what they wanted. None of this means anything in terms of his relationship with the two of them, as evidenced by the fact that Ciri still wants to be around Geralt even though he raised her in the cold, rat-infested dump that is Kaer Morhen. But the real tell here is how he responds to Geralt's request to search their rooms. He's hesitant to let him do so, and even when he does agree, he still follows along. All of this makes it clear that he's hiding something, and so does his response to the White Wolf's findings. Confronted with evidence of a struggle on the night of their disappearance, the Baron does his best Harry Dubois impersonation, insisting that he was drunk and remembers nothing. Again, it doesn't take Dick Mullen to figure out that the Baron knows more than he's letting on. But Geralt's no Aunt Molly. He's a far better investigator than this. So why doesn't he pick up on all of the very obvious clues here? Just as I said earlier, at this point in the game, he views the Baron as a kindred spirit, as someone motivated by the same familial impulses as him, and to accept that the Baron might have played a role in the disappearance of his wife and daughter would not only shatter that mirror image, but force him to wonder if Ciri might not have been safe here after all. So Geralt heads off to the Pellar, blinded by wishful thinking, to learn about an amulet left behind at the scene by the Baron's wife Anna. And it's there that the truth is revealed. Geralt learns about the amulet's protective powers, of Anna's miscarriage, and the botchling that resulted from it, and critically, that the Baron abused Anna. The Pellar doesn't come out and say it. Geralt makes the realization on his own. Removed from the man he viewed as a mirror, it's plain for him to see. Geralt might have repressed emotions, but the game is full of small moments where he's very expressive, and this is one of them. You can see the frustration in his knitted brows, and hear it in his voice when he realizes just how horribly the Baron must have treated his wife and daughter. When the White Wolf returns to the crow's perch, the barn is ablaze, and it's up to the player to decide whether they'd like to try and rescue the man trapped inside. Regardless, after that, the Baron once again tries to win Geralt over with his bravado. "A barrel of Lyrian," he declares. But Geralt is in no mood for another round of the Baron's bullshit. He wants answers. And after proclaiming that he knows the truth, Geralt proceeds to beat them out of him. He's not just pissed off about the fact that the Baron is a serial abuser who lied to him and wasted his time with a sham investigation when he knew his wife and daughter had ample reasons to leave home. He's furious that the Baron is not the kindred spirit he pretended to be, that he's not truly a devoted father in search of loved ones who were taken from him by the cruelty of the continent. Anna and Tamara were not taken by his enemies, nor a beast. They were forced to flee from the monster in their own home. With every punch, kick, and grapple, Geralt is reacting to this dark discovery, to the funhouse mirror version of himself, who he now realizes is just as vile as the creatures he hunts for a living. In its own way, the brawl here in the courtyard, surrounded by fire and smoke from the burning barn, represents a halfway point in the quest, a climax for the Baron's time as a parallel to Geralt, and the beginning of our dive into his morally gray character. After giving the Baron a taste of his own medicine, they head inside to talk things over. He admits to abusing Anna, but denies ever having harmed Tamara. Geralt can express that he doesn't believe him, but the Baron insists and goes on to describe the many things he loved about his daughter, about how she rode horses, hunted with the men, and even drank with them. What's interesting about this statement is that it could easily be applied to Ciri, which likely explains why the Baron liked having the ashen-haired girl in his home so much. She reminded him of his own daughter, and I think Geralt picks up on this too, which is why he doesn't press the issue any further. The Baron will then describe the night his wife and daughter left in detail. He tells Geralt that they came to him, told him they were leaving. He begged them to stay, but they were unmoved by his pleas, at which point the Baron put his hands on Anna. She escaped, and they fought, a struggle that ended when Anna struck the Baron with a candlestick and knocked him out. The next morning, the Baron awoke, still on the landing where he'd passed out, to discover that both of them were gone. And worst of all, in Anna's bedchamber, he found nothing but blood and a miscarried fetus. It is a harrowing revelation, one that no doubt strikes a chord with anyone who has a history with domestic abuse or miscarriage, the two major topics at play here. I have a lot to say about all this, especially when you add in some other information provided to us by the Crones. But this video is about the Baron, so that conversation will have to wait for another time. Still, it's important to note that the game makes it very clear at this point that the miscarriage might not have been the Baron's fault, and that the amulet might have had a part to play. Geralt straight up says this, and honestly, it's kind of weird in context, as Geralt can say plenty of accusatory things during this conversation, but I would interpret this as the developers wanting to make it 100% clear that there is more to this story. Because if the Baron was indeed responsible, I think that's the end of him as a morally gray character. It would make him pretty irredeemable, a true villain, and remove any opportunity for the player to make an evaluation of his character, as they can do at the end of the questline. Geralt can either empathize with the Baron or chastise him further. But regardless, The reveal of the miscarried fetus that the Baron buried without a funeral coalesces with what the Peller told Geralt about a child caught between life and death. And thus, Geralt tells the Baron of the botchling and how it can be used, either following a ritual or its death, to track down his missing wife and daughter. Presented with both options, the Baron is insistent that Geralt perform the ritual and promises to dig his unborn child a grave at his threshold himself. Again, this is CD Projekt Red making the Baron impossible to pin down, the grayest of the gray. He's done terrible things, but he wants to atone, at least for this one. Whether or not it's genuine is left entirely up to you. If Geralt proceeds with the ritual, it kicks off one of the strongest gameplay segments The Witcher 3 has to offer, as he'll have to fight off wraiths and calm the botchling as the Baron carries it to the grave. Despite some complaints, the Baron does an admirable job of bringing it to the grave, where he and Geralt engage in what is one of the most gut-wrenching scenes in the entire game. Beneath the moonlight, the Baron embraces the botchling as his child and buries it, ensuring that it will transform into a lubberkin. His emotion is raw and palpable, as it always is, while Geralt's is subdued, but he's moved nonetheless. You can tell how much this moment affected them both, but again, the decision about the Baron's true nature will be left up to you, as Geralt still chastises him when the ritual is complete, and refuses his attempt to wait for the lubberkin's arrival along with him. With the help of the lubberkin, or the blood of the botchling if you took a different path, Geralt can track down Tamara. He'll find her in Oxenfurt, now serving with the witch hunters of the Church of the Eternal Fire. Unsurprisingly, she'll want nothing to do with the Baron, and even throw the doll he asked Geralt to give her away. In return for this news, the Baron will tell Geralt more about Ciri, how she drank and made merry with him and his men, and challenge the Baron to a race for his prized steed. While there's obvious plot significance to this, finding Ciri is why Geralt is helping this sad old man after all, it doubles as another way for CD Projekt Red to muddy the waters on the Baron. After hearing the way Tamara talks about him, and all of the totally understandable reasons she never wants to see her father again, we're immediately shown how welcoming and downright jovial he can be under the right circumstances. It's this continued juxtaposition that makes the Baron such an interesting character, and so difficult for the player to decide whether to condemn or absolve him. But just as before, the Baron cuts the story short, forcing Geralt to find Anna so he can learn more about what happened to his own missing daughter. To find Anna, Geralt must travel to Crookback Bog and progress through a questline that brings the White Wolf face to face with the powerful crones, who add another twist to this already complex tale. Anna, he discovers, is now working for the crones as their servant following a deal she made with them. After learning she was pregnant, Anna decided she didn't want to have another child by someone as terrible as the Baron, and came to the crones in search of a way to do away with the pregnancy. In other words, she came to them for an abortion. This adds yet another complicating matter to the story of the botchling, intersecting the issues of domestic violence, miscarriages, and now abortion into a single quest line. All of this I'll cover in a video on the botchling at some point down the line, but for now, I do have to say that it is truly impressive that CD Projekt Red was able to merge all of these real-world issues into a fantasy RPG in such a natural and authentic way and handle it with such grace. The crones agreed to the abortion in exchange for a year of Anna's service, but as is often the case with such powerful beings, they never specified when or how this would happen. So not only would the abortion happen on the crone's time and not on Anna's, but as the fetus lingered inside her, it sapped her strength, killing her slowly as well. Aware of the danger she was in, Anna went to the Peller, who gave her the amulet from earlier to protect her from the magic of the crones. When she lost the amulet during her fight with the Baron, the crones decided to trigger the abortion right then and there for maximum effect on all parties involved. So indeed, as Geralt said earlier, it was not the Baron who caused the miscarriage. It was an abortion all along, one that the crones used to further cement his own sorrow. When told of Anna's whereabouts, the Baron demands to know why Geralt didn't bring her back. It's rich to see him yell at Geralt for not being forthright. The Baron's been keeping information from the White Wolf all along. It's why we're running around Velen for him in the first place. He'll then tell Geralt that the story of his life with Anna wasn't all black and white, that he's not the bad guy here, and that there's blame to go around. A bit of meta-commentary on the topics the developers are exploring with this quest. He'll then go into the backstory of his relationship with Anna, how they met after she stitched him up following the Battle of Anchor, and were married shortly thereafter, but were continually separated by the Baron's life as a soldier. Eventually, the Baron learned that she'd taken a lover, a childhood friend named Evan, during his absence. She left him a note announcing she was leaving him and had taken Tamara so they could live together with Evan. The Baron went there, he claims, with every intention of trying to convince her to come back, but upon seeing Evan, he went into a blind rage, killing him. Anna then attacked the Baron with a knife, at which point he did hit her, the first time he ever abused her, or so he says. From then on, their marriage was a disaster, with Anna miserable and the Baron trying to win back her love without success. Like everything else about the Bloody Baron, your take on this is a deeply personal matter, one no doubt tied to your views on infidelity, or whether or not that is at all comparable to the horrors the Baron enacted upon his wife in the decades that followed Evan's death. CD Projekt Red doesn't insert their own opinion, but I think all of us would agree that murder and domestic abuse are far worse crimes than infidelity. So in truth, the question the developers are asking here is not does the fact that Anna cheated absolve the Baron, but does this information humanize the Baron and give Anna some measure of blame for why the relationship deteriorated in the first place long before the Baron ever laid a hand on her. No matter what your viewpoint is, there are a few takeaways from this dialogue that I think are worthy of discussion. First, this story has always felt a bit tacked on to me. The Baron's last stand, if you will, to prove to Geralt that he is indeed a good family man, the man he pretended to be when he first met the White Wolf. But it also ties back to a point I made at the beginning of this video about how Velen reflects the realities of a medieval world at war the same way Westeros does in A Feast for Crows. When I listen to the Baron's story, I hear less about a relationship that fell apart and more about a relationship that was doomed to fail because of the Baron's career as a soldier. They barely knew each other, got married and had a child together, and then were apart for months at a time. I'm not surprised that Anna cheated. Not every wife is Catelyn Stark, waiting patiently at home for their husband to return from fighting in some lord's war. This, in turn, explains why the Baron's rage overtook him when he saw Evan. I don't think he set out to kill him. I do believe the Baron's telling the truth about that part. But he's a soldier, a man forged by the fires of war. Violence is all he knows, the only way he can respond to any adversity. What he did to Evan, and even to Anna, is what he's been conditioned to do. War after war, campaign after campaign, battle after battle. Does this make the Baron a product of his environment? Most abusers are. They don't just wake up one day and decide that hurting others makes them feel good. Things happen to them over the course of many years that cause them to turn to their darkest impulses. Does this make him a tragic figure? Again, that's up to the player, and their chance to make a statement on the matter is rapidly approaching. Now that Geralt has the full story on Anna and the Baron, it's time to finish up another, the story of Ciri. The Baron will tell Geralt of how the two of them fought a basilisk together. Well, how he waved a dagger at it while Ciri did all the hard work, and then sent her on her way to Novigrad with a horse. Geralt then thanks him for helping her, and regardless of how you might feel about the Baron, not everyone she encountered on her journey across the continent was as courteous as to give her a horse and a place to stay. Honestly, I think that there's an argument to be made here that this is another place where the realities of a medieval world tell us something about the Baron's character at large. In this time period, all men were expected to be a husband and a father, no matter how they might feel about things like marriage and children. In today's world, however, we recognize that such responsibilities are not for everyone. perhaps the Baron was never meant to be a father, because as we see with Ciri, he seems far better with other people's kids than his own. Either way, the Baron will ask Geralt to join him in venturing to Crookback Bog in an attempt to bring Anna home. At last, he's crossing the threshold from trying to find his missing loved ones to doing something to find his missing loved ones, the same dichotomy that separated him from Geralt earlier. It's here that the Baron's story reaches its climax, as he comes face to face with his daughter. He tries to butter her up much as he did with Geralt in their first meeting, but it's to no avail. She truly has no interest in reconciling with him, to the point where she doesn't even view him as her father anymore. In an attempt to convince Tamara that he's changed, the Baron calls on Geralt, at which point the player can at last pass some form of judgment on this morally gray character, either by saying that his actions are genuine, staying neutral, which, to my mind, is as good as saying that he's no different than he was at the start of the quest, or getting right to the point, the whereabouts of Anna, who's nowhere to be seen. Depending on the player's actions, two things can happen here. If the player killed the spirit in the tree, or released it before the crones asked him to do so, Anna will be found alive but delirious, her mind poisoned by the magic of the crones. The Baron will then take her in his arms and vow to travel to the Blue Mountains in search of a healer, while Tamara will return to Oxenfurt, but not before making her father promise to take good care of her mother. If Geralt spared the spirit in the tree, then they'll find that Anna has been turned into a water hag as punishment for failing to stop the orphans of the bog from escaping. Geralt can then search the area, and if he finds the right doll, signified by flowers the Baron knew to be her favorite, he'll manage to break the curse. But only for a time. The curse is a death sentence, and there's nothing the White Wolf can do to stop it fully. Anna, Tamara, and the Baron will then have one final conversation together before Anna dies. There's another variation of this ending, where if Geralt picks the wrong doll, she'll burst into flames instead. Either way, they both lead to the same conclusion, with the Baron hanging himself upon Geralt's return to the Crow's Perch. Which of these endings is most appropriate is up to you, but one thing that stands out to me is that, in both, the Baron is acknowledging that he has done a tremendous amount of wrong and needs to correct it in some way, either by trying to heal Anna or by taking his own life. Suicide is never the answer, and should you ever have any thoughts along those lines, you should seek professional help. But in a medieval world, it would have been viewed as a way of acknowledging one's wrongdoings, and I'm sure that's what the Baron was thinking when he decided to do this. With his wife and daughter truly gone, there's nothing for him to do but accept that he is indeed the monster they believed him to be. The other ending is more positive, but it's important to say that it is not redemptive. True redemption is not a single act, it's a process, better exemplified in the stories of Piccolo or Vegeta, who spent countless hours of screen time atoning for their mistakes, than that of Darth Vader, whose face turn, though it may be one of the best in any medium, consists of one valiant sacrifice at the end of a life of evil. So to my eyes, this ending is only redemptive if the Baron completes his quest to find a healer for Anna and becomes the family man he once pretended to be. But we don't know what happens next in the story of the Baron. We don't know if he finds a healer, if he takes good care of Anna, or if he gives up and succumbs to his alcoholism along the way. It's up to you, the player, to write that ending. Personally, I'd like to think that the Baron does succeed at finding the high bar of redemption I just set for him, but I'm honestly not sure that he's up to the task. In this version of events, Anna is now significantly disabled, and will require a higher level of care that I'm not sure the Baron is capable of providing for her. Even if his intentions are genuine, there's nothing about the Baron that would indicate he's prepared to be a true caregiver to someone who will likely need help with even the most basic of tasks. Complicating matters is the fact that the fate of the Baron is tied to another questline in Velen. As mentioned earlier, whether or not Anna lives or dies in the return to Crookback Bog is determined by how Geralt chooses to deal with the spirit in the tree. If Geralt kills the spirit, she lives, and so does the Baron. But the orphans of Crookback Bog are devoured by the crones. If Geralt frees the spirit, Anna and the Baron die, but the spirit frees the orphans, and the White Wolf can find them living in Novigrad later in the game. Still, don't mistake the spirit in the tree for a benevolent force, as it will destroy the village of Downwarren and will likely go on to raise hell around Velen in the future. Some players believe that you can circumvent this choice by releasing the spirit in the tree before the crones give you this quest, thereby allowing you to save the Baron, his wife, and the orphans on a single playthrough. I once believed this myself, and encouraged my wife to do this on her playthrough of the game. But this is not the case. In this version of events, the spirit in the tree doesn't mention the orphans and knew nothing of them at this point, and thus didn't save them. If you do this, then they won't appear in Novigrad safe and sound, as they do in the ending where you free the spirit despite the wishes of the crones. It's been speculated that this is an oversight on the part of the developers, but it's not. CD Projekt Red confirmed on their own forums that this was done intentionally, because the point here is that you have to make a choice, no matter how difficult it might be, between the Baron and his wife or the children and the vile tree spirit. So the question the player must ask at the end of their time with the Baron is not only does he deserve a chance at redemption, but does he deserve it at the expense of the orphans? Or do the orphans deserve an opportunity for a better life, at the cost of not only the Baron and his wife, but the people of Downwarren and likely many others as well? If you're saying to yourself that this is an impossible, perhaps even cruel choice, then you're absolutely right. It is. There is no winning in The Witcher, no true triumphs on the path, for even the hardest fought victories are Pyrrhic at best. I've played through The Witcher 3 all the way through 3 times now. Once when I was a 20-something, knocking back beers in my parents' basement. Once with my wife, shortly after we moved in together. And more recently, as a 32-year-old YouTuber trying to build a better life for his daughters. Trying to be a good family man, just like Geralt. And every time I've played through this questline, I've come away with a different take on the Bloody Baron. Just like any great art, our perception of it changes as we grow older, as we experience new aspects of life and shoulder greater responsibilities. Back when I was in high school, a teacher told me that you should read Catcher in the Rye at different times in your life, because your opinion on it will grow and change as you grow and change. I'd argue that CD Projekt Red has created something of similar status here, a character and storyline that evolves along with the maturation of the player. But through all of those playthroughs, one thing has remained the same. I've never walked away from the final moments of the Bloody Baron's quest and felt like I made the right decision. I don't want the Baron to hang himself. I want him to face the natural consequences of his actions and atone for them. But I put a high value on the lives of the orphans, even if it means releasing the very evil that spawned the crones. No matter how old I get, no matter what point in life I'm at when I play through this game, I don't think that ambivalence will ever change. It's intentional on the part of the developers, to make you feel as conflicted as Geralt so often does. And that is what makes the Bloody Baron so important to The Witcher 3. He begins the game as Geralt's foil, a funhouse version of a family man, a continuation of the themes of the prologue in White Orchard. But as the player dives headlong into the morally gray skies of war-torn Velen, he becomes the foremost example of the complicated and ambiguous choices they'll have to make throughout the game. Choices where there is no right answer, where someone always loses, and you're forced to wonder if you should have taken a different path. The Baron is The Witcher 3 distilled down to a single character. Its narrative nuance and moral complexity, its tragic portrayal of a medieval fantasy world, and its uncompromising determination to confront a wide variety of controversial topics with maturity and grace. CD Projekt Red has written plenty of characters that are fan favorites, like Vernon Roach and Gaunter O'Dim. But as I see it, the Bloody Baron, for all of these reasons, is their very best work. But while the Bloody Baron serves as Geralt's foil, there is another character that steps into the role of the White Wolf's opposite. A character who is not an original creation of CD Projekt Red, but who they certainly portray in their own unique way. So I hope you'll join me next time as we take a deep dive into the video game version of the White Flame dancing on the graves of his foes, Emir var Emrys. Phew. Thank you for watching what is officially my longest video to date. As you can tell, I have a lot to say about the Baron, and I wanted to make sure that I did this award-winning questline justice with a thorough and comprehensive discussion. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like it and leave a comment down below so it can hopefully catch the blessing of the YouTube algorithm gods. Huge shout out to James Pruitt, Raven Lampkin, Corey Matson, and Reed, who get early access to these videos with donations of $5 to $10 a month. Big thanks to Ellen Storm for allowing me to use her covers from the Witcher soundtrack for these videos. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.